Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's just jump right into it. We walk through life every single day making one massive fundamental assumption, right? We just assume that one physical brain equals one singular consciousness. We feel like this unified self securely housed inside our own skulls. But when you start looking at medical science, you realize that this simple equation is actually surprisingly fragile. I really want you to think about this scenario because today we're going to challenge basically everything you think you know about personal identity. Where exactly do you end and where does someone else begin? Is your sense of self tied to the literal tissue inside your head? Is it the experiences you feel? We're going to explore the fascinating, sometimes baffling boundaries of consciousness by looking at medical anomalies that stretch our understanding of the mind to its absolute limits. Now, humanity has been fascinated by polycephaly for centuries. We've all heard the Greek myths, right? Creatures like the Hydra or Cerberus guarding the underworld. But polycephaly, having more than one head on a shared body, isn't just a myth. It's a literal biological reality. Scientists have actually found a 122-million-year-old fossil of a two-headed reptile. It happens across the animal kingdom. But when it happens in humans, it forces us to ask some incredible questions about the mind. And to really understand how brains might share information, we first need to deconstruct the mind by looking at what happens when a single brain is physically divided. Section 1. Severing the connection and the independent minds of split-brain patients. So, inside your head right now, your brain is divided into a left and a right hemisphere, and they communicate seamlessly through this massive bundle of nerve fibers called the corpus callosum. Think of it as the brain's main communication highway. But in cases of severe, life-threatening epilepsy, neurosurgeons will sometimes perform what's called a collosotomy. They literally sever this connection to stop violent electrical seizures from spreading. Medically, it's often a huge success. But cognitively, it effectively creates two independent spheres of perception operating within a single skull. This perfectly illustrates the highly specialized roles of each side of the brain. Your left hemisphere is generally your analytical center, language, logic, writing, and it controls the right side of your body. The right hemisphere is the spatial powerhouse, facial recognition, coordination, and it controls the left side of your body. Normally, they share all this data instantly, but without that corpus callosum, the two halves literally can't talk to each other. Total radio silence. And this isolation leads to some wild, almost unbelievable real-world conflicts. It's sometimes related to a phenomenon known as alien hand syndrome. Imagine the sheer absurdity of getting dressed in the morning, only to find that your right hand, which is controlled by the left brain, is pulling your pants up while your left hand is actively fighting to pull them right back down. In another documented case, a patient actually grabbed his wife aggressively with his left hand while his right hand frantically fought to pull the left hand off to protect her. It's this bizarre parallel reality where one hemisphere literally disagrees with the other. To actually test this divide, scientists like Michael Gazzaniga and Roger Sperry, who actually won a Nobel Prize for this, came up with these incredibly clever visual and tactile experiments. Because our vision is cross-wired, they could flash an image exclusively to the patient's right visual field, which only goes to the left brain, or to the left visual field, going only to the right brain. Then they'd ask the patient to either verbally say what they saw or reach under a table to feel around for a matching object. This brings us to the famous chicken and the shovel experiment, which is just absolutely mind-blowing. Researchers flashed a picture of a snowy winter landscape to the patient's right brain and a picture of a chicken foot to the left brain. When asked to point to related objects, the patient's left hand, guided by the right brain that saw snow, pointed to a shovel. Makes sense, right? But when the researchers asked the patient why they chose the shovel, the speaking left brain had a major problem. It hadn't seen the snow, it only saw chicken. So instead of admitting it didn't know, the left brain just straight up fabricated a perfectly logical yet completely false story. It said, "Oh, the shovel is for cleaning out the chicken coop." The brain simply invented a narrative to make sense of a disconnected reality. Let's move to Section 2, the thalamic bridge. One skull, two realities. Okay, so we've seen what happens when one brain is divided into two disconnected minds. Let's flip the script entirely. Let's look at reconstructing consciousness when two distinct brains are neurologically joined. Meet Krista and Tatiana Hogan. Born in Canada back in 2006, these girls are craniopedius conjoined twins, which means they are joined at the head. But their connection goes way, way deeper than just sharing a skull or blood flow. They have a remarkably rare neural connection that makes them utterly unique in the history of neuroscience. The secret here is that the Hogan twins possess what researchers call a thalamic bridge.
Deep within your brain is a critical structure called the thalamus. Think of it as a central relay hub or a grand central station for your senses. It processes sensory information, helps with motor control, and mediates wakefulness. In Krista and Tatiana, a bundle of nerve axons forms a literal physical bridge connecting their two thalami together, allowing bidirectional neural transmission between two entirely separate minds.
Because of this bridge, they have an astonishing overlap of conscious experience. Seriously, listen to this. If you cover Tatiana's eyes and show Krista a toy, Tatiana can tell you what the toy is. If Krista drinks juice, Tatiana can taste it. Krista even has sensation and motor control over Tatiana's left leg. Their family says the girls will suddenly burst into laughter together at a joke that only one of them thought of without a single word being spoken. They are quite literally sharing a stream of sensory consciousness.
Section 3. Shared Senses, Separate Selves. The Philosophical Inquiry.
These extreme medical anomalies force us to ask some incredibly deep philosophical questions. When sensory experience is shared, does identity merge? One philosophical framework that some thinkers use to make sense of this is Thomistic dualism. According to this view, the mind has both material and immaterial powers. The material powers are the physical things, autonomic functions, motor control, and sensory perception like sight and taste. Those rely entirely on the physical brain tissue. The immaterial powers, though, are things like abstract reasoning, logic, and your core personal identity. And in this framework, those are independent of the physical matter. If you look at the Hogan twins through this lens, it offers a pretty fascinating perspective. The girls clearly share material brain tissue, that thalamic bridge we talked about. So it makes perfect biological sense that they share the material powers of their mind, like tasting the same juice or feeling the same tickle. But despite living in this shared sensory world, their rational minds, their distinct personalities, and their identities remain completely their own. They are two entirely separate people experiencing a partially overlapping physical reality. It sets up this perfect, beautiful mirror image of consciousness. Think about the contrast here. In split-brain patients, dividing the physical brain stops sensory communication, but it absolutely doesn't create two completely different people. It just creates parallel streams of perception inside one person. And on the flip side, with the Hogan twins, merging two physical brains creates shared sensory experiences, but it definitely doesn't collapse them into one person. The core identity holds firm in both extremes. This resilience of human identity aligns perfectly with what medical pioneers like neurosurgeon Wilder Penfield observed. While operating on conscious patients, Penfield found he could use electricity to stimulate memories, movements, and sensations, but he noted that there was an aspect of the mind he just couldn't reach, something that remained totally beyond his surgical instruments. You can alter the hardware, you can bridge the sensory inputs all you want, but the core essence of the self seems to remain remarkably untouchable. Section 4. Redrawing the Boundaries. The Future of Neural Integration. So, why does all of this matter to us right now? Well, aside from just being a captivating look at human biology, these cases are actively rewriting the textbooks on what the mind actually is. The key takeaways from this explainer show us that the self is vastly more fluid than a simple equation of biology. These cases prove that one body equals one mind is a flexible rule, not a rigid law. Sensory experience can be completely decoupled from your individual identity. And maybe most importantly, it shows us that consciousness doesn't have to be locked away in an isolated box. Under the right conditions, it can extend, it can network. And I want to leave you with this pretty provocative thought. Today, we're talking about medical rarities, but tomorrow, scientists are actively developing brain-computer and brain-to-brain interfaces. If our minds can be organically split with a scalpel or organically merged through a thalamic bridge, what happens to human identity when we can technologically network our thoughts and senses together? As technology advances, the physical boundaries of your own consciousness might just be our next great frontier. Thanks for diving into this explainer with me today.